Today on The Mentors Who Made Us, we have an amazing guest whose journey is as diverse as it is inspiring. As an artist, researcher, professor, yoga instructor, and author of the book We Have Everything, Sylvia has been guided and influenced by those who have helped her identify her spark and encouraged her to act on it sustainably. Now, we're going to explore the stories of the mentors who made Sylvia the incredible community builder that she is today, and how their guidance has influenced the work she's doing to create more harmony, ease, and juice into the world. Sylvia, it is an honor to have you as our first official guest on The Mentors Who Made Us, and I would personally love if you did me the honor of introducing the story of how we came to know each other and how we got here today, if you wouldn't mind.
So we were working at a small nonprofit, literally so tiny, even the building was tiny. It was in this like weird, should have
Industrial
been
area.
probably a house. Yeah, it was in like the industrial area of this city, but
in a house.
It looked, yeah, it looked like a house. And there were like 4 parking spots in the backyard or something that had been turned into cement. So that should give you an idea of the kind of budget that this organization had. We were doing the work of mentoring and supporting people in mentoring. So, supporting community-based mentorship programs. We shared an office.
We sure did.
And I think we spent most of the time in that office like waxing poetic on global concepts that may or may not have had anything to do with our jobs.
That's when we were the yappers, and then who was our office buddy? Was it Megan?
Megan, yeah.
Who was like
and
mom?
I think, oh yeah,
Megan was mom to us.
Yeah, no,
which
totally.
Is funny,
and
because she actually ended up inspiring me to go back to grad school to Antioch, and then you ended up coming to Antioch also. So that like little room really cultivated a lot of
mentorship. Wow, for sure. Because I also went to Antioch because you did, and so it was kind of like this like domino effect. You were like, "Yeah, I'm doing this thing," and I was like, "Oh, should I do that thing?"
And then I was like, "Do the thing, please."
Yeah.
But
yeah,
we thought we were going to do the same program, but you had a turn of events that completely took I feel like your grad school, but also your career in a completely different trajectory than, I don't know if it was planned, but we'll get to that.
Yes, entirely. And one thing your listeners will realize about me probably by the end of this episode is that I am definitely woo-woo. So it felt super divinely orchestrated as far as that switch. But we can get more into that later. But it's very potent pivot, I'll put it that way.
All right. Well, with that, I will say that we met in our little tiny office in Georgetown, Seattle, and Sylvia has since gone on to be one of my closest friends over the last 7 years. We'll see. 7? I don't even know at this point, but
I would
she even married me and my husband, if that tells you anything about the level that our relationship has progressed since that tiny room. Sylvia and I could talk about just about everything and anything under the sun, and we do. Professional yappers. However, for the purpose of the mentors who made us, today I'm really excited to just talk all things mentorship, which is beautiful given that our relationship started when we were working at a mentoring organization. So, Sylvia, would love for you to tell us a little bit about your career and the role that mentorship has played in where you are today. I specifically love to ask the question, did you always know that you were going to be working in the work that you do now?
That's such an interesting question for me. When I was 5 and I went to kindergarten, I decided immediately that I was going to be a teacher one day. My father wanted me to be the first Black female president of the United States, Although there might be somebody else who's about to beat me out on that goal here. We don't
Couple
need to talk about
months.
that. Yeah. But anyway, so between like my father just having this outrageous belief in me and what I can do, and me deciding that I wanted to be a teacher, I think it definitely feels like a no-brainer that I've gotten into what I am doing. And it's like as close to what 5-year-old Sylvia could conceive of as like cool educating.
Cool
Um,
educating. I would describe you as a cool
yeah.
educator.
Thank
Emphasis
you.
on the
Someone
cool.
else. Thanks. This person that I was interested in, she said that my vibe is off-duty art teacher, and I was like, yes, thank you,
Off-duty art
received.
teacher. Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Um, yeah. So, I do work in health and wellness as well as educating around the connection between our spirit, our body, and the things that science is now catching up on as far as those mind body connections go. And I didn't really know what subject I was going to teach back in kindergarten. I just wanted to be a teacher and to be somebody who helps other people learn and grow. So I would say yes and no. I had no idea that it would take me down this trajectory of like yoga, environmentalism, outdoor rec, wellness, even indigenous studies. But I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. So yeah.
I love it. You're one of the rare few, like 2%, where I've asked 1,000 people this question, and like so many typically are like, I had no idea I was going to get into this, but you're one of those like rare folks who always had that like in them where, yep, this is the thing that I'm progressing to. I want to know though, like, yes, when you were 5, you knew you wanted to be a teacher, but what did that transition from like high school going to college look like for you? Like, did you have anyone in your life who was like planting seeds for college, and like who was kind of your support systems during that era of your life?
Yeah, I had a counselor in high school named Mr. Sugden,
Oh,
and yeah, I'll never forget him. I really, really deeply, deeply appreciated him. Um, I was definitely one of those kids that would kind of just leave class because I was having a mental health moment and I just didn't want to be there. So I would go to his office and just be like, I feel like I'm not supposed to leave school right now, but I can't handle being in class. And then we would chill a little bit, and then eventually he'd be like, you need to go back to class. Um, but, he really allowed me to develop a relationship with him, and I told him about some of my interests and goals. And he supported me in making sure I got my SATs done on time, gave me some options for SAT, like tutoring classes I could take so that I could try to make sure that my score was great. I was a really strong writer, so neither of us were really worried about the essay portion. Um, he really tried to encourage me to go out of state, and I think that,
hmm.
how do I put this? Some of that had to do with his desire to see me individuate from my family, um, which I think was well intentioned. And also, I had this like deep desire to stay close to my younger sibling. So I ended up going with a school here in Seattle. When I walked onto campus, I immediately got this feeling that this was correct. I was supposed to be here, and it was just in my gut. Like, and that feeling has really become a compass for me throughout my life. But that was the first time I really ever remember feeling it in any significant way. So I would say I had some spiritual mentors there as well as my high
Yeah.
school counselor, Mr. Sugden. Yeah.
Shout out. I thought it's interesting that you said that he kind of had this desire for you to go out of state. I think that, how did that feel in the moment? Did you like kind of brush it off, or did you feel like this pressure to impress him and try to apply to out of state colleges?
Um, believe it or not, I was less of a people pleaser in high school than I am now.
I
So,
love that.
yeah, I don't. But I'm trying to get forward, not back because we don't go backwards, but I'm trying to get forward more to the way that I used to think in high school. Um, but I wasn't that concerned with impressing him, but I was curious and open. So I did apply to a few California schools, one of which it was like Humboldt State, uh, because I just am a hippie. It is what it is. I've accepted that about
Well,
myself. Yeah. As well as some other California schools, Portland State University, and then maybe like one in Arizona or something like
okay.
that. I got into all the schools that I applied to. But
Naturally.
yeah, I guess. But I just really felt that it was important to stay close to my family for various reasons. And so I chose that. I chose what I felt was correct and important.
What, to the extent that you're comfortable sharing, what were your social influences, both peer and non peer, during college?
Yeah, great question. So college was definitely a time of individuation for me. So when I first started, I was going to this fundamentalist church that my mom
Mm,
forced me to go to. Yeah. She said I had to come to church or I would be kicked out. And I was like 17 or 16. And I was like, well, I don't know how to be homeless. So I guess I'll go to church.
all right.
Um,
That's how it is
yeah.
sometimes.
So there were like a couple different pockets of people. Like there was this like fundamentalist group of people that I was starting to separate myself from. There were some like woo woo kind of yoga spiritual people that I was starting to get a little bit more curious and leaning in toward. This is also around the time when I started exploring my own queerness, although I wouldn't have called it queerness at the time. So I started hanging out in some of like the Gay Straight Alliance or like LGBTQ spaces, and then I also joined the Black Student Union at Seattle University. So that's like freshman year, and then I started going outside.
So you phrased it. You started going outside. What type of extracurricular activities were you enjoying at that time?
I had this boyfriend,
Ooh,
yeah, and he was a very hurt, broken, hurting person.
mm,
Um, One thing that he liked to do was go to EDM shows and do a bunch of party drugs. And he invited me a couple of times, and I found out that EDM shows and DJs are awesome. And because before that, I had really only ever been to like hip hop R&B concerts. Like I had never really been into like the electronic like EDM stuff. Um, but I was also really hurting and broken at the time too. And like this music, something about it just kind of like reverberates in your body, and it gave me just a moment to not feel the crushing weight of the world that I
yeah.
felt I was mm, struggling against every single day. Um, so I started doing that. I started getting really involved with a lot of the gays and theys. Back then, this was probably like 2012 ish. And at that time, the Capitol Hill neighborhood in Seattle was still very much the gayborhood. So it was very gay, very arts, and that was where I spent most of my time. Um, and there's a lot that I participated in. Um, and I think one of the big things that that era planted a seed for me about is that um, there is so much more to life than reading books.
Hey, Which I love that was your problem to be had. You're in the books. You're
I
in the theory.
Yeah.
But you had to put
I
it
was.
to practice.
And I found out that it's really hard to do that. In certain situations, under the influence of certain things. Whether that influence is a way of thinking, if it is something that you ingest, if it is certain people that you have around you, like the theory, the space between the theory and the practice became really clear for me. And I think that really started like 2012. A decade long exploration of that gap between theory and practice.
Hey, that's a good amount of time. Which, like, I was gonna say, you eventually ended up organizing your own spaces and places for people to come together.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really where your like community organizing seed was planted, or was it? It was actually much
No.
earlier. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, I know this. I'm like, when did baby community organizer Sylvia sprout?
When I was 10, I wrote my first publication called the Hadnot Gazette. I printed it on my home computer that was like this big, you know?
Remember?
And like it
I'm like,
made,
some of us
yeah,
remember.
yeah, and it like made weird sounds when it connected to the internet, like,
Yep. Dial up, baby. That's a
yeah,
core memory. Dial up sound.
yeah, it's never going anywhere.
No.
And then, yeah, anywho, so yeah, I wrote the Hadnot Gazette, and I disseminated it myself by walking around my neighborhood and placing it on people's doors with tape
That's
or
adorable.
in their mailboxes. Thank you. Um, and like then eventually it was summertime, and using the Hadnot Gazette, I organized a barbecue and I assigned all of these adults different sections of food, like, oh, this family you're on dessert, this family you're on sides, my family will be bringing blah blah blah, and oh, this family you guys have the grill on wheels, I need you to roll it out to the street at this time. You have a picnic in your yard, I need you to take that out of your yard and place it in the street at this time. Everybody obeyed me. They all obeyed me.
I've listened. When you have a 10-year-old with a project plan, like it's like pretty hard to like say no.
I don't know who I thought I was. Yeah, and then in high school, I was in jazz band, and at the time there were no all ages open mics in Seattle. I think the Vera Project was maybe just getting started
Oh
with
yeah.
some like all ages shows, but there was like no open mics that were all ages. So every time we wanted to do an open mic, we had to like talk to the adults and be like, can you get us in at this club where you're supposed to be 21, but we're 17 and we're really good at jazz, so they're gonna love it. And it was just a hella annoying, and like all of us were just like ready to be so much more autonomous than that. So we started, and me and my trio quartet-ish, I played drums. We started an all ages open mic at the Neptune Cafe in the Greenwood neighborhood of Seattle, which has since burned down, which is sad. Yeah, but they gave us like a little budget. They gave us Tuesday nights every single week. And we got, I don't know why they believed in us. I think one of the parents helped to coordinate it, and I just probably forgot. But
Yeah, shout out.
yeah, so we got to do that, and so that was kind of my next layer of stepping into kind of community organizing, hosting, and really seeing a community-based problem, a community-based arts and culture problem, and implementing a community-based arts and culture solution.
I love that. But then, so in college, you met this boyfriend, got into the EDM scene, different change of pace. You, though, like spotted another gap in that space. Tell us a little bit more about what that second iteration of kind of community music, dance floor spaces
Yeah.
that you created, co-created, created.
Yeah. So that first boyfriend is like long history by now. by this time, and something that your listeners might realize also is I have been very influenced and mentored by men that I've been in relationship with, even though most of them were not very good at being boyfriends. They did mentor mentor me and expand my life in a lot of ways. So by this time,
which
two
is
things
like
can be
normal.
true.
I think that's the part people don't like to admit about relationships is like they teach us like a lot of good and sometimes bad, but the good you got to give it credit where credit's due. I think at least.
I so agree, and I also feel like I finally come to an understanding of what my part was in choosing people who are not good partners. So I feel actually really comfy talking about it because I don't feel like I'm going to repeat that mistake again, finally, which is great.
You love this. This is the best era. No, but I think that's something I continuously go on rants about is just about how much influence and mentorship comes from our everyday relationships, that are not just formal, fancy mentor titles.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so I had been single for a while, not long enough, but it had been a while.
Hey.
Which is also a pattern. Oops. That I have learned about. Anywho, I was walking to this art show in Capitol Hill, and I got off the bus, and like the sun just like shined down on me, and I was like, ooh, I'm gonna meet someone special at this art show. And then I walk up, and the first person I see is this rap guy, and I'm just like, really, God, that's the one? And then I was like, okay, cool. Oh my God, what an adventure! I was in fucking love.
Of course. A creator after your own heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was just really fun. Like, we would go to the studio until 4 a.m. sometimes, you know. I got really immersed in hip-hop and rap culture in Capitol Hill and just Seattle in general. I started to... Okay, let me rewind a little bit. So one of the things we used to do back at Seattle U before I got involved with this EDM boyfriend is we would throw house parties, but they would be for charity. So there would be a cover at the door, and like the cover would help pay for the keg, and then whatever was left over, we would donate.
That's community. That's on community.
I mean, this is like a small Catholic school of a bunch of very wealthy people who probably grew up under philanthropy and like that kind of stuff, so they probably wouldn't have allowed themselves morally to get so faded without then doing something. I don't know, not that it's like I don't think it's ethically wrong to get faded and not contribute, but this is a different kind of person. So right. But that kind of gave me a blueprint. So when I was, coming up in this like hip hop entertainment, like kind of rap and, just that kind of a space when I was younger, I wanted to kind of recreate that blueprint. So I got with one of my friends. We created, two of my friends actually. We created this thing called Trilogy. Part of it was because there was 3 of us. But then our tagline was like, write the next story in your chapter. So it's like a trilogy, or write the next chapter in your story, excuse me. And we threw our first show, and the headliner was my boyfriend at the time. We also booked like a live artist who was doing an installation that was interactive. It was in this like weird warehouse that was a couple minute drive away from that building where you and I met. And I mean, it was 3 cute women that were like 22, 23, putting on a party, and one of us worked in the entertainment industry as a makeup artist. One of us worked in the industry as an actor, and then I was the community organizer. So between the three of us, we had actually a pretty powerful influence and network. So that first party actually kind of blew itself out of the water. Like, it was extremely successful, which was dope. And we made a commitment that every time we threw a party as part of Trilogy Tribe, what we would do is donate the proceeds to various different community-based organizations.
And what did those two collaborators teach you at that time in your life?
It was my first time working with friends, and I think a lot of people say not to mix business and pleasure, but I think that's really just cowardly, to be honest. It's controlling. And go with me here. So working and being in labor, co-creating alongside people that you have a really close relationship with is a different challenge than doing that with a colleague. It also provides different opportunity for excellence too, though. So, like, if you have a collegiate disagreement with someone you're close with and then it affects your personal relationship, obviously that's really hard to overcome. It's painful. Sometimes you don't have the skills. Sometimes you just don't have the attitude or the mindset, and you just want to be, F you. But that will obviously have a negative impact on the project. And for me, my projects are so passion-based that it's like they're part of my, like, compass. They're part of my true north. Like, my work that I do in the world, the projects that I work on. And so, that meant I had to figure out my conflicts with these people, whether the conflict was personal or whether the conflict was project-based. And for me, coming from a home where conflict was pretty much always violent, and rarely actually resolved, that was really hard. And I had an MO of avoidance for a really long time. Just avoid, run. Ended up hurting myself and a lot of other people by following that way of being. I know I also made some really great, powerful impacts, which is awesome, so I'm not trying to discount that. But there's a lot to learn about collaborating with the people that you're close with that I think unlocks a lot of juice and joy in life that you wouldn't have access to otherwise.
I'm curious, so you said that you kind of grew up in an environment where conflicts were not handled, or they either weren't resolved or they were handled in a more violent fashion. Who's, like, the first person that helped you or, like, basically told you, like, Sylvia, I need you to get regulated? Do you have someone who is, like, in your life who kind of, like, helped you realize, oh, I need to approach these relationships or these conflicts a little differently?
I can look back and see that there were mentors at that time that grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and wanted to influence my self-concept. Mm-hmm. So it was less about, like, my emotional dysregulation and more about my self-concept and how I was communicating about how I believed about myself through my behavior.
Give me an example of one of those people. Like, who's like the first person that comes to mind when you think of that?
Yeah, the first person that comes to mind was a security guard at one of the clubs I would frequent during that era, and her name was Angel. And there were a few different times where I was, like, either just so faded or, like, upset about something or whatever, and she just gathered me and was like, no, this is not for you. Them other shorties, whatever. You are on a different path, and this is not the time for you to get off your path. And I don't, bro, I have chills just now. She was so serious about me. Angel did not play about me, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, I was Angel's baby for sure.
And when you were in your first couple of like jobs, like did you have any like bosses or coworkers who were also kind of influencing like
Yeah.
similarly? Tell me
Mhm.
about them.
Yeah. I had a supervisor. Her name was Shayla, and she was my first supervisor out of college. And I mean, she just thought I was annoying as fuck.
How so? Was it the yapping?
Yes. The yapping, asking dumb questions, like just missing cultural cues and like social cues. Yeah. Just.
But how did you know that
um,
she cared about you, despite the lessons that were
sh-
being learned?
she was always kind in her corrections,
Oh,
and her corrections were always offered in a way that uh, ended up uh, helping me put bumpers on the path so I wouldn't get off. So it was like I could see that whether it was tough love or not, like this is someone that cares about me low key more than I care about myself, that cares about my future low key more than I care about my future, and sees something in me that I don't see in myself yet. And because I respected her so much and what she was doing with her work, I was like, maybe she's right about me. Shayla was my first black woman mentor, so
hmm.
there's that. There's just something otherworldly about black womanhood in general, about being loved by a black woman, about being led by a black woman. Um, I just don't have any other words than like, I'm about to cry. I don't like gather. Gather is such an important word here. There's even a book by Octavia Rahim, who is a poet and yogi, called Gather, and it's all about the ways that black women we gather ourselves and each other because there's nobody else that cares to gather us. Shayla was the first person who treated me like a black person, held me to the standards of
Hmm.
black excellence, and helped me understand the role and position that I play in the lineage of black womanhood.
That's really important. And I'm curious when you think about like mentoring organizations we've worked with in the past where we were matching those like predominantly BIPOC or sorry, excuse me. I know my girl does not like the term BIPOC.
I
Predominantly
don't.
black children that we were serving, but we had over 95% of the mentors were white. I'm curious, understanding how pivotal that mentoring relationship is with you. Like, does any, how did it feel kind of knowing like we were matching a lot of these children with like individuals who were not able to see them fully? Like, how did that feel or resonate, or if at all at the time?
Well, um, at the time, my thoughts were not very helpful. They were mostly just angry and resentful. Um, However, what I would say about it now is that different mentors are for different things. So,
Love that.
yeah, that organization was not capable of providing any of those children with the kind of mentorship that I received from Shayla or Angel. But that doesn't mean that those mentors were without purpose or without reason.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, one thing that I know is one of your things is about like social capital and being able to rub elbows with people in different social experiences than you are and how much that can open up your world. So I think about Mr. Sugden, um, who maybe did not see me in the same way that Shayla or Angel did, but saw my capacity and then provided pathways and resources for me to expand on my capacity. Um, I don't think a white led organization in 2024 or 2012, for that matter, has the capacity to provide the kind of mentoring services that I received through Shayla, and Angel, as well as other Black women. That is something, that kind of mentorship, I think, is just a fabric of the Black community. Mm-hmm. And it could be systemized in a nonprofit, a 501c3, and it is in some organizations. Community Passageways here in Seattle is a Black-led organization that does like violence intervention and like intervening on the school and prison nexus, as well as reentry for people who are criminal legal system involved. And I see that as like an organization that's Black-led that leads with mentoring. But they don't brand themselves as a mentoring organization.
Right.
You know, they're solving a different problem. But mentorship is a big part of the solution to the problem. The kind of mentoring that the organization that we worked at provides is a little bit more about that social capital stuff, and how do you have social mobility.
Social mobility. And how can you do it in a way that reduces the most harm that also can be done by these types of relationships that cross differences in so many different aspects, because I think that's something that I'm particularly always interested in talking about, which is the harm that mentorship can have on an individual or young person. Do you have any experiences where a mentor or a close relationship, someone you looked up to, caused harm that you're comfortable sharing?
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, this one's so bad, but it's such a good illustration. I hope she's not listening to this episode also, because I know she still loves me, and I hope that she knows that I still love her, but our relationship has not been the same since this incident. White woman I really looked up to for a long time, like since I was a little girl. She taught me so freaking much. So we're catching up, we're having lunch, I'm there with another, she's actually introducing me to this incredible Black woman executive director of an organization that she thinks we would really get along. So she's doing the thing. This woman had the audacity to share what she learned after she went to the Smithsonian in DC, the African American History Museum. And what she said is she learned why slavery worked.
Whoa. Do you think... I'm like, my brain goes to like, what level of the Lulu was she on that she felt that was the right space and time, or even a concept that should be discussed?
White womanhood separates you in an embodied way from the atrocities of slavery, and that is by design. It's been like that since slavery was invented. Chattel slavery here on this Turtle Island land. Turtle Island is the indigenous name for the United States of America, for those listeners that don't know. For her, visiting the African American History Museum, the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. was a cultural experience and an opportunity for her to learn in a separated and disembodied way about the history. That's the only way somebody could fix their mouth to say that slavery worked, is if you are disconnected in your body from the atrocities of what happened to my ancestors and the ancestors of the other woman that she had just met, that she was introducing me to. So in some ways, that fumble, that foot in mouth moment, wasn't exactly her fault, because it is the fault of what white womanhood is and what white womanhood as a way of being does to women who are melanin deficient. Because whiteness is not even, that is a created social category. It's not actually like a biological or like scientific category. So like, that's why I said women who are melanin deficient. Because white womanhood is an identity that people put on. And that was extremely harmful. It put me in a position where I then had to take care of this woman who's an executive director. I had to draw a line in the sand. I had to choose up. And I'm a race woman. I'm going to choose every time. Like, I've told lots of people this. If you put me in a position where I have to choose between myself and you, I will choose myself every single time. And, you know, while my mother is white and I am a racially ambiguous person, people don't see a white person when they see me. So that was a line drawn in the sand that was chosen for me before I was born. And it's not one that you can ignore here in Turtle Island. So, yeah, that was extremely harmful. It cut me deeply because this is a woman that I love, that I trusted, that I have been vulnerable with, who watched me grow up. And I haven't been able to look at her the same ever since then, because in that moment she revealed how deeply installed her white womanhood is, which ultimately is a red flag that shows me that I'm not as safe with her as I thought I was, or as she thought I was.
Right. And I'm curious, is there any repairing that, or is that just something where that's a moment where, because me as a white woman, I can't experience that, so I'm curious, is that something where that mentor needs to understand that relationship's going to look different fundamentally for the rest of your lives, or is there any repair process that that person could initiate that could lead to that original relationship looking more like it used to? Or
No.
Don't know. Yeah.
Wounds scar. A scar is irreparable damage. There is a world in which repair happens, and that world is so imaginary to me that I don't even really care to entertain the idea. What's like sad to me is the ways that racial and gendered conceptions of oneself can get in the way of relating.
Mm-hmm. Connection.
Connection. Because if this woman were not so deeply indoctrinated into white womanhood, she never would have fixed her mouth to say that slavery worked. Mm-hmm. That is just a phrase that, regardless of the economic capacity to capitalize on stolen labor, which is what she meant by work, mm-hmm. regardless of the quote-unquote effectiveness of that capitalist strategy, saying slavery worked, I wanted to flip the table over like Jesus in the temple. I wanted to put my steak knife inside of her, and that's on my ancestors. Like, something deep inside of me woke up in that moment. I was like, oh, so you would have been the slave master, is what you're telling me. I would have been the one nursing your children, is what you're telling me. And it's just these moments that reveal someone's inner workings, I think. And I think even on top of knowing your audience, like, it's 2024. Know yourself.
Yep.
And don't be dumb. Stop trying to act like...
Don't be dumb.
Like, I mean, bro, if you're white, just like me, if I'm racially ambiguous, I probably have some internalized anti-blackness that needs to be considered.
Just assume that it's there, I think, is like, that's at least the approach I've taken. So it's a matter of constant management and like understanding and excavating, using that example of like, where does it come up? It's like, it's not a if and or but or are you, it's like it's inevitable, innate, and that sucks, but that's not my fault, but it is my absolute responsibility to address it and like constantly manage. because I care so deeply about the relationships and the people in my life, it's worth doing that work. And because it's always this like matter of like, am I good or am I bad, and not a matter of like, how much do you care to do the work to show up for the people in your life so that they can thrive on the same frequency or higher than yourself. But that's another rant I'm going on now. Sorry.
I think also on top of that too, like when are you going to care enough about the other people in your life, but also when are you going to care enough about yourself to not want to be like that anymore?
Right.
Yeah, circling all the way back, you know, I did share, I just kind of closed out a 10-year exploration of the gap between the theory of my values and the practice of them. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at practicing them now, but I did spend the last freaking decade failing hard and being very embarrassed about the ways that I was perpetuating that gap between my theoretical values and my actual lived experience, practice, lifestyle. And it's okay. I'm here to live the story. I am better for it. I can relate to people more now because I have failed so much. And again, just like you said earlier, which I don't know if you quoted me in my book on Kadash or not, but it is none of our fault that we're here. But we all have capacity to take responsibility for the position that we were born into and for closing that gap between our theoretical values and our actual lived experience and practice.
Oh, this could be like a whole other episode, so I'm going to attempt to pivot us just because like there's so much here to unpack. But tell me a little bit more. Where did this eco yoga, where did the eco come? When did that start? Like who planted that seed for you?
Yeah, I think ultimately it was my father. He's a master gardener. I didn't know we were poor when I was younger because he would grow food in our backyard. Well, yeah, you also don't know, like, but we were never hungry is the thing.
Yeah.
Because we would eat food from our backyard. And he taught me how to build structures so that the beans can grow properly. He taught me about different kinds of vine plants, which plants want to be next to each other, in your, how to till the soil. When do you water? When do you put nutrients in the soil? Like, just all of these things that I thought were just kind of normal, that apparently kids that grow up in urban environments, this is not normal. But yeah, so his mom was also a master gardener. As you can see, I'm just surrounded by plants. Like, this is very my grandma Bessie's culture. And then my dad iterated on her plant-loving culture by also growing food. So all this to say, to wrap it up, I'm learning that you can just eat out of the ground, that food is free when it comes out of the ground. And then when I got to Seattle University, I took a Pacific Northwest history class, and the teacher I had was this, like, drunk Catholic father who was, like, very into social justice and, like, pro-black and stuff, and he's this white guy. And he would, like, by the end of class, he would just kind of be laying on the floor with his belly out type thing, because he would, like, sit in his chair like this and, like, slowly throughout class, or, like, he would just be falling. And he would kind of talk like this, but he had so many good ideas. And so, yeah, he's this weird guy, right? I do too. I don't even remember what his name was, but I took that class, and everything changed. I realized how deeply interconnected social history is here with the land, because that class was basically an indigenous studies class. And the land became more than a friend to me. It became something to protect. So that, combined with kind of my natural sort of inclination towards social good and social impact work, it was just kind of a no-brainer.
That brings us to kind of the you're going to do my grad program at Antioch University,
Yep.
but tell the story.
Yeah, so I scheduled an informational interview with the director of that program, and she double booked herself, and I was the one who got kicked off the schedule, and she was like, we'll reschedule. And I was like, I'm already here and I'm not coming back because this neighborhood fucking sucks and I hate parking. So I gotta talk to somebody today. I'm not coming back. So I spoke to the director of the environmental education program instead of just the general education program. And she gave me a flyer and she completely poached me.
She did.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is actually why I came here today. Once again, this divine orchestration. Like, the general ed program would not have served me at all. I would have probably burned it down to the ground and gotten into a bunch of conflicts, to be honest. But the environmental education program did serve me. My cohort was also 85% people of color and 50 or 60% black. Yeah, so it irrevocably changed my brain chemistry, the way that I think about things, and I now see everything as part of a system. And what's cool about systems is if you change one small piece, the entire system responds.
Ooh, and what does that mean in the context of like relationships, work environments? There's so much there then. So much power, opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah. Literally. So you can take it gives you the permission to take incremental steps toward change, first of all. So then you're less overwhelmed. You have to deal with less of that guilt that maybe that white mentor we were talking about before is dealing with, or we were referring to earlier. Because when you realize that every small movement that you make actually matters and impacts the system, those small movements become so much more dignified. And then you can actually believe like, oh, I am impacting my environment. I am changing things by me going to yoga class and emotionally regulating so that I can show up as a positive contributing member of community. I'm changing the world. Because when I change and show up in this way and I do what I need to do to commit to that, it gives other people the permission to, and then I'm one less person that is violent or harmful to them as well. And in a world where violence and harm are kind of the norm, I mean, this is America, right? I spell America with 3 Ks for a reason. In a world where violence and harm are the norm, being one person who is taking responsibility for ahimsa is what we call it in yoga, or non-violence, non-harm. You're changing the entire system. That one moment where the director of education double booked, she changed the entire system. I think, mistakes, plans changing can be these really, really juicy opportunities to slow down, check your surroundings, and take note of like, okay, what is the interesting part of this? What's the opportunity part of this? What's the golden nugget part of this mistake? Or
there's opportunities everywhere, but you just have to be regulated enough to realize that they're there.
If you want to make the most effective, economical decision, where you are using your resources in the most sustainable and, again, effective, return on interest kind of way, you have to calm down to the point where you can actually weigh the options and be logical and make a decision from a space of response.
In a lot of ways, I'm like, wait a second.
Intuition.
In a lot of ways, yoga is like self-mentorship.
Bingo.
Because it's just you and your body and your emotions and getting them all in tune. And I think in a lot of ways, mentors are there to help us like zoom out and see the bigger picture and all the possibilities and opportunities. But sometimes you don't have your mentor right there or a person, but a lot of times there are people there that can act as those mentors and advisors if you are regulated enough to accept that support and help from someone you don't know and trust.
Ding, ding, ding.
All right, Sylvia, it's been a pleasure hearing about the people who shaped your journey and your learning, and how that influences you in your work today. But before we close, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience? Any piece of advice, call to action, any way that they could connect with you in your work?
How people can contact me? Well, I am Earth Mom on Instagram, but it's spelled like M-A-U-M. So I'm Earth Mom.
Mom.
EARTHMAUM. On Instagram, you can also check out my website, haseverything.co. Like Kate said, there are resources on there for lots of different kinds of things, as well as if you are if you're in Washington State, my yoga teaching schedule is on there too. So you can come to a class if you want.
How can organizations, what can they contact you for? Or what should they be contacting you for?
Yeah, they can contact me as Sylvia at haseverything.co on email. And just like I was saying earlier, sometimes you might need a facilitator or a consultant to support you at your organization with closing that gap. One of the ways I like to do that is through consulting on your communications strategy. So how are you actually sharing about your work to the world and creating community through your communications? And then the other way I like to do that is through individualized wellness programs for teams. So supporting teams in their goals to be able to work better together by using wellness as a vehicle to just grow, I guess, intimacy, but also effectiveness and capacity on the team.
I love it. All right.
Thanks.
To all of our listeners tuning in, thank you. I encourage you to think about the mentors who have guided you, formal or not, and consider how you can pay it forward by supporting others in their journey. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who would also enjoy it and resonate with Sylvia's story. And with that, don't forget, we all have something to teach and something to learn from one another. That's all for today. Bye!